good. Hey, let's jump into some of these questions. So the first one I really wanted to tackle here, somebody asked me the question, is it okay for Christians to drink alcohol? Now, let me give a few disclaimers, and this will also apply to the next question where I talk about Christians smoking pot. Let me just give you a few things. Number one, please actually listen through everything I'm going to say here before you just... Some people literally hear the title, get triggered by it in one direction or another, and then start writing silly comments. So actually, please listen. If you're going to disagree with me, maybe listen all the way through before you disagree with me. That could be good. Second, I want to be really clear. I'm not condemning anybody, and I'm also not actually answering the question like, can you go to heaven if you do this? But rather, does God want you to do these things? And are they conducive to human flourishing or flourishing in the kingdom of God? So sometimes we come at a very binary thing like, will you go to heaven if you do this? I'm not answering that question, but I'm actually saying, should Christians do this? Thirdly, if you are, can I just say that I have friends who look at this from slightly different points of view, who I love and I respect and I fellowship with them. I would say this though, if you've come to a place where you think you've got this figured out and everybody else in the body of Christ should follow your viewpoint, watch out, that could be a little bit of bigotry there. And lastly, I would say it is actually important with a question like this that we be Bereans. We go to the Bible, we go to common sense, we go to the Bible, and we're not simply basically saying my denomination or my church background told me this. I mean, if your church background is right, if your church background has wisdom on these things, then don't be afraid of actually saying, is that Bible or is it Baptist? Yeah? Is it wisdom or is it Wesleyan? Is it applicable knowledge or is it Assembly of God? Are we actually push into the Bible, push into the real Jesus, not into religion? So let me begin that one. Is it okay for Christians to drink alcohol? Well, I don't like the word okay. Let me begin here. For many, many, many people, it is not okay. For many, many people, it will never be okay. And I think it's just really good to say, let's just talk about alcohol here. Alcohol can be really, 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 really dangerous. Okay? And I think probably most of us know people who've had their lives destroyed through alcohol, through alcoholism. Probably some of us know people who've died through alcoholism. I do. Or people whose just literally their whole lives have been destroyed by that. Or people whose families have been destroyed by that. I know people whose ministries or churches have been destroyed by that. So anytime somebody comes along and says, oh, it's okay to drink alcohol, I'm like, are you really sure? You want to be careful making some blanket statement, it's okay to do this. Now, personally, I think if we're going to really press into the Bible, here would be my viewpoint. I think it can be okay to drink alcohol in small quantities, in small frequencies, and in a way that is appropriate. Now, I lived in France for 20 years. My wife's French, come from French culture. So I would take the view, and frankly, I know I have Pentecostal friends who disagree with this, but frankly, the Bible's more on my side than theirs. So for me, the idea of maybe having a glass of wine once or twice a week with a meal, in kind of social context, I would have no problem with that from that point of view there, for some people. But I want to be really clear, for some people. Now, there are some people, if they had that, if they came to my home and I just said, oh, here's a glass of wine, and that's going to just boom, kick off something in them, which is really, really dangerous, and I would always be aware of that. So I think it can be okay for some people in some circumstances, but I think it can become very dangerous. And some of my criteria around this kind of thing would be this. If you're telling me, oh, Graham, I drink and God's okay with that, well, rock on. But I would be saying this, are you okay just putting it down and not drinking for a few weeks or months? Would you be okay if you didn't drink for 6 months? Would you miss it? Would you be thinking about it? Is it something you need, or is it something you like? Now, again, I'll probably talk about this more in the next question as well, but I've struggled with an addiction in my life that hasn't helped me. It's not alcohol. I've never really had a struggle with alcohol. I've struggled with food. Yeah, and by God's grace, I think I'm doing well with that. I'm at a better place in my life with it, but I haven't probably completely conquered it yet. And maybe, possibly, I hope this isn't the case, but possibly I need to live the rest of my life kind of watching my diet and my exercise and doing things like that. Now, I don't think I'm a terrible sinner. I think some of my problems with food and being overweight, there's probably some biology and, inherited thing in there from genes and parents. I think some of it is a lifestyle thing. I'm a very busy person. I pack so much into a day and, things like that. Sometimes it's just like a lack of organization. I'm the kind of person, I'll go to my office and I'll work, and then I'll kind of hit this point where I'm hungry and, I didn't think of lunch or whatever. And especially in a place like America, it's really easy to eat not too good choices with food. I think I got into a place at ministry as well, but especially traveling in ministry, where food became a little bit like a reward. When I used to travel, I'd often drive for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and hotel, I'm away from my family, I'm in some church, I'm preaching like a maniac, praying for people for 2 hours, and then afterwards, 10, 11 o'clock at night, some pastor takes me out for a meal, and that became kind of my reward system. So, but also there's probably a piece of laziness or my flesh involved in all of that as well. Now, again, by God's grace, I think I'm doing well with that, but that's something I need to watch and not think, I've just cracked that one now, and I like eating. I like eating nice things. I don't like eating boring things, so I've got to watch that one. So that would be my thing of alcohol. I think it's very easy for people to do immense amount of hurt and damage with that. So, but I think, again, biblically, Jesus turned the water into wine. So there's some biblical ground of saying alcohol in moderation can be okay. I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on the context. I think some of this as well can depend on the association with it. I'll just use the example of France, and France is not perfect, but a lot of children in France grow up in a way where their relationship with alcohol might be their parents, usually in their teen years, giving them a small glass of wine. The parents will actually put water with it and dilute it, and it becomes a little bit in the background. It's not such a big deal in France. Now, in a country like the UK and even more the US, often people begin a relationship with alcohol in more of a rebellious way, or like teens going to a drunken party and getting a keg of beer and getting smashed and getting drunk, or all those kind of things. So I personally would say it's always wrong to get drunk. It's always wrong to be in a place where we're losing control of ourselves. I think whenever we're giving ourselves over to something else, there is a place, frankly, where we give ourselves over to Satan, where we're open to sinning much more. Our self-control goes down. Our own perception of ourselves and what is right and what is wrong and what is appropriate can go down as well. So I would advise anybody either not to drink, fine, or to drink in moderation, and really make sure there are times when you just leave that alone, where it's not something you need. Yeah, I spoke about eating. I like eating ice cream. Yeah. Occasionally I'll take my son to Cold Stone Creamery and have some really great ice. I love ice cream. The problem for me, I have a bit of an addictive personality. If I like ice cream, I could eat it 7 nights a week. Really? If I ate potato chips or pizza, I could eat those things 7 nights a week. I find something I like and I go, this is me. So I would really say alcohol can be okay for some, but really watch out, really be careful with that. And let me add this lastly. We need to really be careful that we're loving others, so that my freedom to drink, let's say, a glass of wine, if my freedom is going to cause somebody else to stumble or somebody else to be hurt, I'd rather forego my right to do that. And I have a greater duty to love others than I do to stand on the right. I've got the right and the freedom to do this. Again, lastly, let me say this. I respect people absolutely who say, hey, my choice is I'm just not ever going to drink. That's great. But do that for your choice personally. Whenever you begin making a law for others and begin condemning or looking down or judging others, you've just fallen into the greatest sin there is. There's no bigger, filthier, soul-destructive sin than condemning other people. So let's love others. We need the wisdom to do this. You know, as a pastor of a church, I could be wrong, but I will never allow alcohol at a kind of church event and things like that. That would not be my choice. Because I know there are people who are struggling. There are people in different places. So boom, that's my perspective on some of those. Hope that helps.